asterisk, asterisk. On the 10th of January 1939, when the baby born at Bronx Lebanon Hospital was named Salvatore Mineo Jr., the midwife remarked, "There's something in this child's eyes." He was the third child of Sicilian immigrants, Josephine and Salvatore Mineo. What the nurse saw that day might have been the same eyes that would captivate millions of viewers 16 years later, shining in the shadow of James Dean, mesmerizing the world with his performance in Rebel Without a Cause. The first step of one of Hollywood's most tragic journeys was taken on that cold January day in the outskirts of the Bronx, in the shadow of war. Asterisk, asterisk. New York's Bronx district in the late 1932 was a place where Italian, Irish, and Jewish immigrants lived in cramped apartment buildings with cultural diversity and economic hardship intertwined. Salvatore Mineo Sr. and his wife Josephine were Sicilian immigrants, working with the dream of building a better life in America, a family devoted to their traditions. Father Mineo worked as a coffin maker during the day, while playing the accordion in neighborhood restaurants at night. His passion for music not only contributed to the family budget, but also filled their home with melodies. Josephine was a mother who instilled strict Catholic values in her 4 children, while also supporting their dreams. Young Sal held a special place in the family. Among his siblings Victor, Michael, and Serena, he was the one who seemed to have inherited his father's musical talents. By the age of 5, he would imitate his father's accordion and sing at family gatherings at home. He was different even as a baby. His mother Josephine would recount years later in an interview. While other children played with toys, Sal would try to touch his father's accordion. There was always a sparkle in his eyes, as if he had a big secret. Growing up in the shadow of World War II, Sal became acquainted with the harsh reality of the Bronx streets early on. Like other neighborhood children, he played baseball on street corners, switched between Italian and English, and attended Sunday school at church. By the age of 7, Sal's energy seemed boundless. His teachers complained that he couldn't sit still in class. One day, the elementary school principal called his parents to school. While the Mineo couple expected a warning that their son was hyperactive and required special attention, they were surprised by what the principal said. "Your son has an extraordinary talent for performance. During last week's school show, everyone was watching him. You should direct him to dance and theater classes." At that time in the Bronx, it was unusual for a boy to dance. Though Father Salvatore was hesitant at first, he couldn't ignore the sparkle in his son's eyes. Sal was enrolled in a dance school at the age of 9. This decision would change young Sal's life forever. However, this change would also bring challenges. Neighborhood children began to mock Sal for attending dance classes. He was nicknamed a dancing boy. He was subjected to bullying after school and even physically attacked several times. "There were days when I would be beaten on the streets," he would later tell a newspaper. "I would come home covered in blood. My mother would cry, my father would get angry, but I didn't want to stop dancing. When I was on stage, I forgot everything in the world." Asterisk. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to continue with Sal Mineo's extraordinary life story. We share the real-life stories of Hollywood's unforgettable stars every week. Asterisk. Despite this challenging start, Sal continued his dance and theater classes. By the age of 10, he chose a different way to cope with neighborhood bullying. He joined one of the Bronx's most famous youth gangs, the Rampers. This was his first real rebellion. Although it's not known exactly how long his gang membership lasted, this experience taught him the language and rules of the streets. He would later say that he drew from these experiences in his troubled youth roles in films like Rebel Without a Cause and Dino. The turning point in Sal's life came at age 11. On the day he sang at a talent show at his school, a Broadway talent scout who happened to be there watched his performance. After the show, he approached the Mineo family, saying Sal should work professionally. The family's financial situation wasn't good at that time. Father Salvatore was struggling with the decline of his musician jobs. Mother Josephine was busy with the care of 4 children. Sal's acting career could be an additional source of income for the family. Thus, at age 11, Sal Mineo had his first professional acting experience. He took a small role in Tennessee Williams' Broadway play, The Rose Tattoo. During the play, he shared the stage with famous names of the time like Eli Wallach and Maureen Stapleton. "The first time I stepped on stage, my legs were trembling," he would recall years later. "But when the lights hit my face, all fear vanished. I felt like I had been there for years." The Broadway experience helped develop Sal's performance talent. Soon, the doors of the television world also opened to him. Between the ages of 12 and 14, he took roles in popular television programs like Omnibus, Studio One, and Frontiers of Faith. During this period, Sal's education also began to change. He no longer attended a regular school, but received lessons from private tutors while working on sets and stages. He couldn't form normal relationships with his peers, spending more time with adults. This situation matured him early, but it also prevented him from having a normal childhood. By the age of 14, Sal had already become an important source of income for his family. With the money he earned, he moved the family to a better home in the Bronx. His father, Salvatore Sr., watched his son's success with pride. However, this success also began to change family dynamics. Now, the breadwinner of the house was a child who had just entered adolescence. "Sometimes I would see a sadness in my father's eyes," Sal had said in an interview. He was a traditional man from the old country. Seeing his son accomplish things he couldn't do was both prideful and difficult for him. Sal's big screen opportunity came in 1955. He signed a contract with Paramount Pictures and starred alongside Tony Curtis in the film 6 Bridges to Cross. The film told the story of a major robbery in Boston, and Sal portrayed the younger version of the character. The time spent on sets taught Sal how Hollywood worked. His ability to be comfortable in front of the camera, his quick grasp of directors' instructions, and his professional attitude earned him respect despite his young age. This first film experience was preparing Sal for a bigger role, Rebel Without a Cause. The film would star James Dean as a young rebel and would change Sal Mineo's life forever. In the summer of 1955, director Nicholas Ray began casting for Rebel Without a Cause at Warner Brothers Studios. James Dean had already been selected for the main character, Jim Stark. Natalie Wood was being considered for the role of Judy. For the film's third main character, Plato, the director was looking for a sensitive but complex young actor. When 16-year-old Sal Mineo auditioned, Nicholas Ray said after watching his screen test, "In this boy's eyes, you can see a person's soul." Sal won the role of Plato. The character was an emotionally fragile youth abandoned by his family. Plato's devotion to Jim Stark was one of the most emotional elements of the film. In fact, It was a bold move in Hollywood at that time. The film showed Plato's admiration for Jim as a romantic attachment, albeit in a veiled way. On the Rebel Without a Cause set, Sal formed close friendships with both James Dean and Natalie Wood. Dean, in particular, became a mentor and source of inspiration for young Sal. Dean taught Sal method acting techniques, encouraging him to explore the emotional depths of the character. "James taught me more than acting," Sal would recall years later. "He showed me a different way of looking at life. Working with him was the greatest chance of my life." During filming, Nicholas Ray wasn't hesitant to use his actors' real emotions. Sal's feelings of loneliness and alienation for the character paralleled his experiences from his own childhood. Plato's devotion to Jim was fueled by Sal's real admiration for Dean. One of the most dramatic scenes of the film took place in an abandoned mansion. Plato, Jim, and Judy were playing family for one night. Sal's performance in that scene contained real emotions: longing for family, desire for acceptance, need for love. When Rebel Without a Cause was completed, 16-year-old Sal had delivered the most important performance of his career. However, before the film's release, tragic news arrived. James Dean died in a car accident on the 30th of September 1955. Dean's death deeply affected young Sal. "A part of me died with him," he would later say. This loss left deep marks on Sal's emotional world and perhaps shaped his subsequent career choices and personal journey. Rebel Without a Cause was released in October 1955 and achieved great success. Sal Mineo's performance as Plato garnered critical acclaim. At the age of 17, he was nominated for an Academy Award in the Best Supporting Actor category, making him the youngest male actor ever nominated in this category at that time. This nomination was another turning point in Sal's life. He was now seen not just as a child actor, but as a serious talent in Hollywood. Despite his young age, he had earned respect with his art and was heading towards the peak of his career. This extraordinary journey from the narrow streets of the Bronx to the Oscars was like an example of the American dream. The son of an Italian immigrant coffin maker was now one of Hollywood's brightest young stars. However, Sal's successes would bring new challenges. The change in his physical appearance during adolescence would alter Hollywood's perception of his type, causing a dramatic turn in the young star's career. In 1956, at age 17, Sal Mineo, nominated for an Oscar for his performance in Rebel Without a Cause, had now become a sought-after name for new projects. Hollywood's studio system began marketing him with a young rebel image. This was an attempt to fill the vacancy left by James Dean's unexpected death. He was planned to co-star with James Dean in Giant, but even after Dean's death, Sal's scenes were largely cut in the final edit. This was one of the first signs of Hollywood's attitude toward him. Despite this, Sal rapidly continued his career. He played leading roles in films like Crime in the Streets, Rock, Pretty Baby, and Dino, especially in Dino, a film depicting the story of a youth from a street gang. Sal drew from his own childhood gang experiences. On the set of Dino, 18-year-old Sal was now physically changing. His childish face was hardening, his jawline becoming more pronounced. A concern had begun among executives at Warner Brothers Studio. Mineo is no longer that cute kid. His type might not sell anymore. Sal had begun to feel this change. While he was seen as ideal for sweet, innocent boy roles in the early years of his career, he was now moving away from this image. However, Hollywood was struggling to find a new category for him. In the years 1957 to 1958, Sal's career began to be directed slowly towards stereotype roles. He portrayed a Native American warrior in Tonka and a drummer in the Gene Krupa story. While these roles allowed him to showcase his talent, they also began to trap him in a certain category. During this period, Sal's private life was also a focus of Hollywood's interest. Fan magazines published romantic gossip about him, especially mentioning alleged relationships with young actresses like Natalie Wood and Jill Howarth. Studios encouraged these kinds of stories, especially when rumors about Sal's sexual identity began to circulate. By 1959, Sal was now 20 years old and at a turning point in his career. Otto Preminger selected him for the role of Dove Landau in the film Exodus. This was an important opportunity for Sal to demonstrate his potential as an adult actor. For Exodus, Sal went to Israel and conducted extensive research to portray a young Jewish character who survived the Holocaust. This role was emotionally challenging for him. As someone of Italian Catholic origin, he made efforts to understand Jewish history and suffering. His performance in the film earned him his second Oscar nomination. Being a twice Oscar-nominated actor at the age of 22 was an extraordinary achievement. However, this success couldn't change Hollywood's shifting attitude toward him. After Exodus, the roles coming to Sal began to decrease. Studios were no longer planning big projects for him. His phone rang less, and offers from his manager decreased. During this period, a wind of change was blowing in Hollywood. The studio system had begun to collapse, and a new film language and aesthetic understanding had started to develop. Sal was struggling to adapt to this change. In the early 1960 seconds, Sal turned to a music career. He recorded songs like Start Movin' and Babyface. Music was an escape for him and an alternative way of expressing himself. However, Hollywood's decision about him had already been made. He was now seen as an old-fashioned star. New generation directors and producers were turning to different types of actors. In 1965, Sal portrayed a psychopath in Who Killed Teddy Bear? This dark role further damaged his Hollywood image. When the film was released, critics and the industry marginalized him even more. From this point on, Sal's career slowly declined. Big film projects gave way to guest roles in television series. Hollywood's once shining star had begun to fade. But Sal Mineo's story didn't end here. In the late 1960 seconds, he returned to Broadway and focused on his theater career. He took a role in the play Fortune in Men's Eyes and later directed this play. The theater was a renaissance for Sal. Without Hollywood's limitations, he had found an area where he could realize his own artistic vision. During this period, he began to face his sexual identity more openly. In the early 1970 seconds, Sal returned to Los Angeles and directed a play called P.S. Your Cat is Dead. He was showing efforts to revitalize his career and had slowly begun to get results. However, on the 12th of February 1976, 37-year-old Sal Mineo was stabbed to death in the parking garage of his apartment in West Hollywood. The murder was claimed by a thief, Lionel Ray Williams, who was later captured. Thus, an extraordinary journey from the narrow streets of the Bronx to Oscar nominations and then to the shadows of Hollywood came to an end. Sal Mineo became a figure who left a mark in cinema history with his talent, struggle, and tragedy. Sal Mineo's story is like a mirror reflecting the bright lights and dark shadows of Hollywood, both the promises and disappointments of the American dream. His legacy is still being reevaluated and understood by film historians and critics today. Asterisk, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn what Sal Mineo experienced in the later parts of his life. In the continuation of our series, where we tell the true stories of Hollywood's unforgettable stars, we'll narrate Sal's dramatic journey from the rise of his career to its decline and his end, recorded as one of Hollywood's most tragic deaths. Share your thoughts in the comments. Why do you think Sal Mineo's career declined? Was Hollywood's attitude toward him fair? Asterisk.